Hello to you and welcome to Adelante Chicago. I'm Lourdes Duarte. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bienvenidos. We've all seen those videos of people being detained or arrested by immigration officials. So the question becomes, how can you protect yourself and your loved ones if you encounter federal agents? The Resurrection Project is now offering workshops to help individuals know their rights. And here to tell us a little bit more about what those rights are is Laura Mendoza. She's a lead trainer at the Resurrection Project. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, it's so important that people know their rights right now. Is it your sense that most people have a basic understanding of what they need to do if they're approached, if they're confronted with a situation like that?
Yes, I think people have a basic understanding, but it is also really difficult to actually know how you're going to act in that moment. It is also, we've seen it, we know that agents act very differently. We know that agents are escalating situations. So our Know Your Rights presentations really are a means for people to practice, to think about, what is it that they're going to do? How is it that they can center themselves and calm themselves in the event that they find themselves in a violent situation?
So important, so important. And it's affecting so many communities in Chicago. Let's talk about your approach and what you're teaching people to do, right? So walk me through a scenario. Somebody is approached by an immigration, a federal agent, a border patrol agent, and what should they do?
So they can ask for that agent to identify themselves. That agent should be identifying themselves as either ICE, Border Patrol, whatever agency they're with. We know that unfortunately that is not happening. Right. We also know that a lot of the times they're not wearing uniforms. So it's really hard for our families, our communities to really know who these individuals are that they're detaining them. With that said, even if an agent identifies themselves, an individual has the right to remain silent. And, we really urge individuals to remain silent. They don't have to talk about their immigration status. They don't have to talk about what country they were born in. That is typically the questions that enforcement is asking about where you were born, how long you've been in the U.S. You don't have to answer any of those questions. You do have to exercise your right to remain silent. So you do have to verbally say that you are going to remain silent and you're not going to answer any questions.
Okay, but it seems like a lot of people might be afraid of not answering the questions that they're being asked of because they think, well, if I don't answer, I'm going to get arrested. So maybe I should sort of comply with what they're asking me to do.
Yes, so we know that that is a possibility, and that's why, sometimes it is a case-by-case situation. You really do have to assess kind of what's happening. If it is safer for you to do so, to answer that question, you can go ahead and comply and answer the question. Just know that unfortunately what we're seeing right now is that agents really have a lot of discretion. And so even if you answer that question, and even if you are a U.S. citizen, we have seen cases where individuals are still being detained because that is what the agents are able to do. They are able to detain you if they have reasonable suspicion to believe that you are not legally in the U.S.
And I think, for a lot of people, we're not just talking about being detained, 30 minutes, an hour. I mean, some of these folks are spending half a day behind bars, if not longer, until things get worked out.
Yes, and that's a lot of what we're fighting in the courts, right? The fact that there isn't really a protocol, that there isn't really guidance on how these agents are acting, and that people can be detained for hours, for days, in facilities that are not meant to have people detained for that long.
Okay. I know one of the other questions, and this becomes really difficult because it requires money, time, and sort of the resources to know who to go to. When people are told, make sure you call an attorney, that you touch base with an attorney. Look, not everybody has an immigration attorney at the ready, right?
Correct. And I think also the reality, even if we were to have an attorney for every single person, it is important for people to know that there are some cases that there is just we will not be able to do anything from the legal perspective, right? There isn't a way for individuals to stay in the U.S. And I think that's also important for people to understand. So part of what we do in our Know Your Rights trainings is talk about what does family emergency planning look like? What are things that you need to have in place, that you need to think through to make sure that your family is protected in the event that you are detained, in the event that you are deported and we are unable to do anything from the legal perspective.
Okay, so emergency family planning, what does that look like? What does it include?
So that includes things like making sure you have documents for each family member, from passports to birth certificates to any immigration document if you are an immigrant that you might have available. So making sure you obtain all those documents, making sure that you know what community resources are available. So reaching out to organizations like the Resurrection Project to understand what other services we're able to have. And one big one that a lot of families with children have is making sure that there is a plan for your child, and that includes a short-term guardianship letter. That short-term guardianship letter is able to give somebody the ability to take care of that child day to day. Does not take away parental rights.
Yeah, so much to think about, and people should really treat this like, have it in a binder, have it ready to go, have it in some of your safe spaces to make sure that people can tap into it and let others know in your family, look, this is where all this stuff is. Because look, a lot of people here in the U.S. Have a property, right? There's a lot of immigrants who own property, and they're going to have to figure out what to do with that property.
Right. We're talking about immigrants who have been in the U.S. for an average of like 15 years. So these are people who have lived their lives here, who need to do things like make sure that if they do have an asset like a property, that there is a plan for that. And that could be either they're going to keep it, there's going to be things like power of attorneys that need to be taken into consideration, or if they're planning on selling, right? Like all of that needs to be initiated. Yeah. So a lot of things for families to really think through.
To think about. Okay, one of the other things that you're telling people is don't sign any documents, which that's pretty common sense, right? I think for a lot of people.
It is, but also, again, in the situation people find themselves in these detention centers, under pressure, under stressful situations. I think for sometimes people really think that it's just going to be easier if they sign a document. We also know that agents are lying and are not telling individuals exactly what is being signed. So between enforcement lying about what those documents are and individuals wanting to get out of that situation, they end up signing a document that gives up their right to go in front of a judge and to fight their case. And that's exactly why we keep saying don't sign anything, even if you're familiar with the language, even if you speak English. All of those documents that you're being provided have legal repercussions, and you need to understand what those are before you sign.
Yeah, so give it a second. Okay, your workshop seems incredibly helpful. So if folks are watching and perhaps they want to tap into your resources at the Resurrection Project, how are you working out these workshops? Where should they go?
Yeah, so if you are a community member, if you just want to join our workshops, we do them virtually every Thursday at 6 p.m. And every Tuesday at 2 p.m. in English. You can just go to our website, resurrectionproject.org. You'll find more information there about our websites, and you can register there.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. The lead trainer for the Resurrection Project, who is leading some of these workshops. We appreciate all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
All right.